All right, thank you, everybody. I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order. We're here for the monthly Assembly Infrastructure Enterprise and Utility Oversight Committee of the Whole, and we are noticed today from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. I'd like to start with member introductions in the room.
Yarrow Silvers.
Daniel Volant.
Member Constance here to my right.
Christopher Constant.
Not on the phone, we have Mr. Myers
Yes, thanks, Chair.
and Mr. Martinez.
Present.
All right, anyone I'm missing? Okay, it doesn't look like that. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. We have nothing under unfinished business, and the first item under new business is going to be 2 updates from Merrill Field. Please introduce yourself for the record and take it away.
Yes, good morning. My name is Earl Malpas, the Airport Director, Merrill Field, and the Deputy Director, Amy Garcia. It's a privilege to be here this morning and kind of give a quick update and some information for the committee's awareness. First off, we have Merrill Field Bulletin, a newsletter, quick commercial here, for your information, knowing what's going on. Also, May 31st, there will be a Merrill Field Aviation Celebration where we will be inviting the communities and to meet with the airport tenants. And looking forward to a good, exciting time during that event. The first main item on our agenda would be the discussion and for the awareness of the committee to understand that we'll be proposing a rate increase for Merrill Field for the fiscal year 2026. Some of the reasoning behind it is prior to the pandemic, the annual rate increases stopped. So it's been by 2026, there will not have been a rate increase for land leases and aircraft tie downs and things like that for 6 years. If we had, right now, our current land lease goes for 24 cents per square foot. Had we done the annual CPI increases over the last 6 years, the land lease would be 39 cents per square foot. Those are, we felt like that was too high of an increase. I think it's about 40% increase. So we are proposing a 10% increase across the board for the land leases, and also increase the tie downs for the aircraft 10% as well. There's also aircraft parking, long-term vehicle parking will be increasing those 10% as well. Then I've been reviewing for the last 10 months, we've been reviewing the rental properties that it's on the airport land, and we'll be increasing those as well and doing some adjustment on that. So this is like just an awareness and introduction, and see if there are any questions that the commission or assembly members have that we would be able to address.
I'm just going to note quickly for the record, Member Brawley joined us at 11:02, and then Member Constant has a question.
Yeah, thanks. Do you have this in writing for us?
We can. This was like an awareness. I do have the proposed budget and where it breaks down each line item and what it will be. So we didn't bring it this morning, but this was primarily for the awareness and see what kind of questions that you would want to see.
Yeah, we definitely want to see the rates, not just kind of the abstract up by a percentage. So it would be helpful to have just in writing your proposal.
Okay. The part of the awareness part is some of the feedback that you might get from the public would be Merrill Field is already the charges more than any other airport in the state. And part of the reasoning of that is because the state-run airports are artificially depressed. Like at Lake Hood, which would be, someone would say, well, Lake Hood only charges 12 cents a square foot. Problem is Anchorage International, they got landing fees and they're selling fuel. They've got fuel flowage rates and stuff like that. And the FAA is actually pushing pretty hard on the state to increase their rates. So you'll get that type of feedback. I've got a survey of all the airports on the road system and what they charge. So that it's going to be, that's where the biggest pushback will be. is we're charging more than anyone else. Of course, I would say my not so humble opinion is that Merrill Field is far and above better than what the others are. We've got great properties. The location is crucial, and it's our economic impact study, excuse me, that we just completed shows why Merrill Field can expect a higher rate.
So, and I just would offer that it's great to provide us this information in a verbal report, but if you want us to be able to help get the message out, we have to have the tool. Tool is put in writing for us. Thank you.
We'll get the full breakdown for you next. Any other questions about the budget rate increase?
Yeah, I have a question too. First, you mentioned it's a 10% increase, land leases, tie downs, long-term parking. Are there other activities or users at the airport that pay fees that are not being included in this?
Yes, so there are fees that are controlled by the airport manager. That would be like short-term parking and transient parkings. We're going to be increasing that. We're increasing a lot of our efficiencies as well. We're going to use the phone pay app where tie-down customers will be able to just pay over the phone. We believe that will also increase the people coming in. It's easier to do than to go into the pilot shack and sign in and write a check and stuff like that. So we're doing that. The landing fees for aircraft that would come in from K2 Aviation off of Lake Hood or Talkeetna Air Taxi, we're increasing. We're creating a fee schedule for that as well. And like I said, long-term parking, we have well over 100 vehicles that pay a certain amount per month to keep their vehicle in a secure parking area. We're raising those rates as well.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on this? No? All right, let's go ahead and talk about the city electric property.
The city electric property is come up for sale. It's from what I understand, a lot of it's just anecdotal information I've heard since I was employed by the municipality. And I've heard varying opinions. One would be that there was no appetite for the airport to increase the footprint. But when we look at, I think we lease 2.6 million square feet of the airport. There's no more airport to lease. It's all over the landfill. So if we're going to, at some point, we're going to reach a saturation point where people will be leaving the airport. But looking forward, if we would like to transition away from fossil fuels and start leaning into the term that the FAA is using now is advanced air mobility. Advanced air mobility is everything from unmanned aircraft to electric aircraft to hybrid fuel type of aircraft. If we're going to transition towards that and kind of lean into it for the next generation of aviation, we need a location for that in order to bring the infrastructure like the electric charging stations and things like that. If you look at the airport right now, there's no location that would be reasonable to place something like that. This area has been butts up against a underserved area, and I believe that we could, if we were able to start moving into that space in aerospace, that we would be able to clean up that area, would be able to provide high-paying jobs for the community, and it would help beautify that area greatly, and would be able. So it's bringing jobs, good-paying jobs, clean up that area. Now, so that would be the purpose of doing that. The plan would be, first off, the FAA will, if it meets the EPA requirements, the FAA will pay or give a grant for that of roughly 93%. Currently, that price of the entire property is $3.75 million. The new owners, Spire Properties, has told me that they spent a lot of time and money and effort to look at the soils and talk with the EPA. And they said that it's all negligible. The worst part of the pollution are at 40 foot deep, and that's coming from, they're tracking it from the landfill water table and down in that area. They're offering to carry the note, or they're offering to lease the property. Since it's for sale, and actually one small piece of that property is being sold as we speak. I would, before I spent a lot of time and effort in considering purchasing this property, I wanted to understand what the Assembly's position would be, if they would be interested in the purchase of this, primarily to provide a place and a location for advanced air mobility or alternate fuel aircraft infrastructure.
Okay, I have, I think, 2 questions, and looking to see if anyone else wants to jump in the queue. I'm also going to note that Member Rivera has just joined us at 11:12, and then actually, I'll go ahead and defer to you, since you're probably going to ask some more questions.
I have a number of questions. What does alternate fuel infrastructure mean?
Alternate fuel infrastructure means, instead of the avgas, the 100 low lead avgas for the noisy airplanes, if you will, the alternate fuel would be electric. They have electric aircraft. It's I understand that it's not real familiar here in Alaska, but I spent 8 years in an airport in North Carolina, and I can assure you that there's a massive push towards electric aircraft and alternate fuel. Alternate fuel also includes like a liquid hydrogen and other types of fuel. The FAA federally, nationally, is trying to do away with the 100 low lead avgas. Their target date is 2030. They've been working on it hard for about a decade. Whether or not they hit the 2030 deadline we're uncertain, but they've been up here. We've discussed it. But this could have some pretty large ramifications for general aviation.
Okay, let me jump in there quick. In this photograph that you have here, is there any fuel tanks that are still fueling up?
No, sir.
Right. And so I think one concern you will have, if you're going to be implementing or proposing to implement liquid hydrogen as a fuel, this is a residential adjacent parcel. And so I think that you're going to have a high bar creating fueling infrastructure, except for electric, anywhere near residential properties.
You're right.
And
Yes,
so I think that you would be wise to be very careful in exploring what you mean by alternative fuels in relationship to this parcel, because the fueling all goes on over here, right? And so it's all well within the kind of apron of the umbrella within the airfield. And so you're not going to blow people's houses up from there.
Right.
You know, you might lose some other facilities if things caught on fire. So that's one. And to the members, what you heard Mr. Malpass say is kind of, is there appetite to expand the airfield? There's long been problems in the neighborhood with a hungry airfield. The airfield always wants to expand and expand into areas of the neighborhood where housing has been taken offline, which you can see at the Sitka Park site. So this is slightly different because it is a former industrial land, and I don't know that this is an accurate picture. I don't know why this lot is so clean and clear looking, because that's not what it looks like, and it hasn't for 10 years, but it's mostly cleaned up. Anyhow, the neighbors are in broad discussion about the use of these parcels because they've seen that they've come for sale, and the parcels on the north end are very much on the apron of the runway. They're right there, less significant from a neighborhood impact perspective than the property that's literally adjacent to all these residences. So there is a question here. Have you proposed this conversation to the neighborhood?
No, sir, not before the airport talks to the Assembly, because it is a sensitive area. I've heard two differing, completely polar opposite opinions that there'd be an appetite for. It would primarily, and what your point is well taken on the hydrogen. I was giving you the definition.
Yeah.
Nationally, but not that what we would be proposing is working with Alaska Launch and other local institutions that is strictly electric charging stations. But I would be wasting time going down that avenue if there's no interest.
And so you said there were two polar opinions. What were those opinions?
One opinion was the airport's land hungry and wants to purchase it, and that's a no-go. The other one was at one point there was a proposal of working with Launch Alaska, excuse me, and having a transitioning towards electric charging stations, and that was bringing that type of business and perhaps unmanned technology. It would bring jobs to the area. And let me pause that. I'm put a caveat. I have talked with Alan from the Fairview community, and he seemed to express interest in bringing good jobs where people could stay there generationally.
Right. And I think right there, you hit on the kind of middle road of the conversation, that hungry airfield has historically been a problem, and yet deteriorating properties are also a problem. Now, for the new members, this is a bit of Groundhog Day, because in about 4 years ago, we had this conversation when there were ARPA funds available, and this process kind of went a little further down the road than we are right now. And the 4 buildings on the top, please, let's do something. The land there, I think that the answer is yes, let's do something, and let's be thoughtful about our engagement with the folks who actually live there to make sure that the uses are compatible with the neighborhood. The Launch Alaska group was an amazing set of folks, and they were doing good work, and then an administration shift happened and it became hostile for them, so they left. And then of course they just lost funding from the federal government, and so I don't know what their position is in this conversation at this point. If they're interested, we should bring them back, but I don't know if they're able to. And so I personally think that you should proceed with meeting with the community, getting a little more specific, and putting forth a proposal, because at this point, this land is in bad state just by its lack of use, and in particular, those 4 buildings. I don't know, the cleanup, it looks pretty disastrous over there, so that's going to be a pretty high bill. And if that's not on us, that's great. If that's on us, we need to have a strategy.
Understood, sir. And again, just to reiterate, the reason all this is highlighted is they're trying to sell it all at once. Doesn't mean that we have to buy it all at once. In fact, like the bottom page that's highlighted in red, bordered, that's, like I said, is being sold as is. The cleanup, what the FAA, I talked with the director of the FAA 2 weeks ago, and she said, Earl, if I was the airport manager at Merrill Field, I would want these properties. And she said, we would be, the FAA would reimburse for the purchase of the property. And if there's cleanup, we would reimburse that as well. But there's more, the current owners right now are actually doing subgrade gas measuring systems, or they're putting those in to see if there's any gases emanating. But again, for logical reasons, I didn't want to go down too far. I've talked with Launch Alaska up to, I think about 2 months ago. They are very interested in partnering, collaborating with the airport for this area. Talked with the University of Alaska, UAF in Fairbanks, asked if they had any interest in working with advanced air mobility in Anchorage. Talked with the director of that area. She said 100% were they interested in trying to have help Merrill Field move towards advanced air mobility. There is no other airport in the state in such a position that would make an impact on transitioning away from the avgas. The other thing is, when these aircraft, if we bring electric aircraft here, it's important to know that they have several motors, which means they don't need such big props. The noise that people hear and complain about are big props. And so the aircraft would be quieter. They don't take as much runway. They are, right now, it may not I'm not trying to insult anyone's intelligence, but this is a big deal. In North Carolina, they are proud of being the first in flight, and they spend a lot of time working in the space trying to move, and they're competing with Florida, Ohio, South Dakota, Georgia. They're all moving in this direction. So I think it would help the state and our community if we had a place to move it.
So last comments from me on this then. The neighbors have, people who are in the land business think that the sales price is too high, that the person is squatting on that land and holding it with this perception of value, but it's not worth what he argues it is. That's one thing. The second thing is, I believe the airfield needs to look across 5th and 6th as a potential campus expansion area, because there are no residences over there. There's a ton of deteriorated property. It's not part of the Fairview neighborhood plan. It's not part of the Mountain View targeted plan. It's a fairly a no man's land of deterioration. And it's about 8 blocks square of potential revitalizable land. And I have in fact talked with some investment bankers who look at that area as a potential gold mine of opportunity. And that would be in partnership with the university, their aviation programs, and the theory of creating a campus between the airfield and that part of the neighborhood that could serve to become that thing you're talking about, which is competitive with those few airports in the United States that are advancing the cause of this kind of unmanned future that we're facing. And so anyhow, I think those are the opportunities, and I think you won't find too much heat in this conversation if the plan is not to put in fuel tanks and potentially burn down houses. So.
Understood. And for what it's worth, just to ease your thoughts on that, we're starting the grant process and beginning a master plan. It's going to be look forward 20 years. I've asked, they were putting it off. I've pulled it in to now, and it's going to be a robust master plan. It's going to be pulled in with a lot of public information. They're going to be looking nationwide trends, and we're looking at just what you were talking about north of 5th Avenue. We're looking at it all, even what are we going to do with the property south of 15th. I know that the spider senses peak when we get talking about that area, but I'm working diligently with the Parks and Rec with the Sitka Street area and other things. So we got a real robust master plan that is eminent that's going to help us with that.
Thanks. I have Member Volin and then myself in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just first a procedural comment. I want to make sure that we are all being recognized by the chair and getting in the queue for our comments. But second, I would like to say, looking at this map here and Exhibit A, the proximity to those residents, anything that were to happen with that property, I'd be interested in what we could do to further buffer, because it looks like there's just a real narrow alleyway separating those properties. So I don't know if that's trees or if it's just expanding the footprint of the alleyway, but I think that's just going to be an important consideration. Thanks.
Yes, and through the chair, thank you. When talking with Fairview community, they've talked about beautification and a buffer zone like that. And so we are, we see that as important as well.
And then for myself, I guess I'll just, sort of latch on that comment. I would think the noise associated with any, new activities there would be of interest to the neighborhood. I used to live 2 blocks from here myself. And so I think it'd be good to make sure that we had some confidence, or could give the people in the community some confidence that we were not going to have a major impact on their quality of life. And noise seems like one obvious place to look. That could perhaps be a conversation for a later day. I do think it would be helpful if we could get something, also in writing relating to the potential economic impact of this expansion of the airport, right? You mentioned jobs, and okay, this is nice to think of jobs, but how many jobs? Like how much additional revenues will this bring to Merrill Field or the city, right? What's the scale of the impact here, so we can consider whether or not, the juice is worth the squeeze, perhaps. And I'm not asking for an answer on that today, but I'm just saying that would be something that would be helpful, I think, for us to have as this conversation moves forward.
Sure.
I'm getting some nods.
Appreciate that comment, Chair. There's so many potential customers that could come, but we will address that as we go forward. I appreciate the time and discussion to be able to broach the topic and communicate, see if there's an interest, and then we can start going very systematically through the process. Mr. Chair, you brought up the economic impact. I'm not sure if everyone has had time to digest some of the information that was put out, but the recent economic impact that was done for Merrill Field showed that there was over $85 million towards the salaries of people that are jobs that are tied to the airport. What that generated was $241 million of overall economic contribution to the state, 95% of which stays here in Anchorage. One of the biggest surprises, I believe, was that because of the air carriers that take people from all over the state and bring them to Merrill Field for their medical purposes, that represented $64 million worth of health care towards the state. A large percentage going right to Alaska Regional, but people are coming for their chiropractic care, the dental care, all those types of things. And the FAA was really surprised and impressed with the impact that Merrill Field has statewide in healthcare.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on Merrill Field? I'm not seeing any other questions. Thanks for being here, and a few things to follow up on.
Thank you.
All right, and I think our next update is going to come from SWS and AWU on the waste to energy project.
All right, good morning. David Pershinger, General Manager, Anchorage Water Wastewater Utility, and I've got Kelly Toth, Solid Waste Services General Manager, here to give a quick update on our joint waste to energy program between Solid Waste and AWW. As always, I'm gonna always share AWW's mission, which is to safeguard the public health and environment by providing clean and reliable water and wastewater services to our community sustainably. Since we were here in April, there was an update presentation at the April Infrastructure Enterprise and Utility Oversight Committee meeting. Since that, we've had a lot of action happen. We had the approval of both our first quarter budget revision, as well as the kind of the conceptual concept of the waste to energy joint effort between AWW and SWS. And then going forward, kind of a little bit deeper dive into where we're at actually on the actual program. So we've held a kickoff meeting. We've set visions, goals, and objectives to kind of get a leadership alignment and overall buy-in from everybody. And then diving a little bit deeper, we're working very diligently on getting our request for proposals, working with purchasing, collaborating with them to make sure that they're prepared for when those come through. And the drafts are in progress right now with the program management office. We're also putting together the selection committee teams, the MOA employees that'll sit on that and help select these professional services for this project as we're moving forward. Again, we've kicked off the project with our program management office. We've done a bunch of scoping meetings, and then we've also started doing a lot of stakeholder engagement, and those include our energy partners here locally within the municipality and even statewide. Yesterday we went with Anchorage International Airport to talk about it. We've been having conversations with JBEAR, as well as other technology providers like Arctic Slope Regional Corporation that are doing some cutting edge research on some of this technology. And then just going forward, I wanted to show kind of a couple of pictures of what these waste to energy concepts look like. And if you recognize our boss, Deputy Manager Mark Spafford here. So on the right there, that's a waste energy plant, and that's in downtown Tokyo, right? So and as you can see, that is operating, currently generating electricity. It's taking municipal waste from all around the city in that area, incinerating it and creating electricity. And as you can see, there's absolutely nothing coming out of that stack. Similarly, Anchorage has been burning biosolids, which is essentially the waste that comes out, the three things that go in the toilet. And so we've been burning biosolids since 1972, or incinerating them. And that's a nice, beautiful day out at our Aspen wastewater plant that's out by Point Warrensoff. Again, we're incinerating 20 tons a day of sludge through that. That's operating right now. Again, no emissions. Always with presentations, I'm always going to throw out, a little public service announcement. I'm highlighting that because we have some new swag, which again, if you follow us on social media, you see this all the time. We're always combating what goes in the toilet, and it's really literally pee, paper, poo. Think WTF, what not to flush. And with that, our vision is to be a trusted and collaborative community partner. If you really want to nerd out, Kelly and I are doing City Nerd Night tonight. So we're talking about waste to energy. So, Kelly, I think you had a couple of things you wanted to add as well.
I did. Thank you, Kelly. So Solid Waste Services, just a quick administrative update. And then next time we come, we can dive into some technical with our engineer staff if you would like to have that. But just at a high level, our compliance order by consent that we have is still in process. We had a rejection of our alternate SEP, the Supplemental Emissions Project. And so we came back and had a conversation and said, how can we partner together? We're working very positively together now. So I'm very, very positive and excited about moving forward with our partners and regulators. So more to come with that. The Merrill-Field progression after the emergency declaration procurement was signed. We have a contract that's signed. We have materials that are on the way. Our flare blower and panel have been ordered and are on the way. We have a meeting coordinating with Earl, Director Malpass at the Merrill-Field, and our engineering has begun aggressively with the details, the plans, and the timeline. So next time that we come, we can give you more of that technical update. Also, the ACOSH cases, we're still awaiting feedback from the state and the attorneys general on that. So hopefully more to come and more information on that. But that's something that we are staying on top of and that we're continuing to monitor. And then I think we had talked about maybe the invitation for a lunch and learn to have you come over to the Central Transfer Station. So we're hopeful that we can get that organized with all of you. And just to plug some of the discussions that you had earlier with Director Malpass, we also are engaging with Launch Alaska and others for a potential beneficial use. So instead of the new flare is going to be our backup, I mean, the intended purpose of that is to destroy as much emissions as we can of the landfill gas, but really even more of a priority will be a beneficial use project. It's just a smaller quantity of landfill gas, but there are dairy farms all over the United States that capture the methane from those farms at a very small quantity and still have the ability to do a beneficial use project. So just so you know, that's on our radar. That's what we're working on. And that's our administrative update. Next can be technical with our engineering team if you have any questions. Thanks.
Okay, first in the queue, I have Member Constant, and then we'll go to Mr. Bowen and then myself.
Couple things to the members. Just know that if you want to measure relative priority of projects by the administration, measure it by the pace and scope of work you see relating to the waste to energy project, because it sees a lot of focus and intent and design and moving forward where other priorities might be. You just measure them against this if you want to understand what the priorities are. Now, Tokyo, I'm interested in understanding how you might frame our waste to energy project relative to theirs. Having been to Tokyo, having been across Japan, I will note that in Japan, you have a different kind of waste management than we have. the trash service in Japan, you have to sort very, very intently. And you have to sign your name to your trash bags in order to turn them in. And so I'm curious their inflow relative to our inflow, if the conversation is about how they can site their locations close to residential areas. Because I would gather, if I were a betting man, that the inflow is much cleaner than anything we would be putting in. And so there's got to be some calculations and kind of approach to what the difference would be. If we're going to use Tokyo as a benchmark, then let us compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges, and not apples to motor oil.
Thank you for those comments. Deputy Meeting Manager, Mark Spafford. Yeah, so that's the reason for that picture, because they do it the best. And so that is the benchmark from like an overall big picture solid waste perspective, because of everything that you just said, right? You hit the nail on the head. They do a good job of making sure that they're not disposing of materials that they shouldn't be in a pile of stuff that's going to go to the incinerator, basically. And so that's why they're able to do a much better job, because they have better kind of like that cultural control and kind of the respect and the discipline with the way that they separate their trash, because they've been doing it for a long time. So the point of that is that that's what we should aspire to. We should double down on the messaging that's associated with how to divert and get materials out of the waste stream where there's a better use for those materials, as well as not putting materials in the waste stream, which is what we do now currently, right? Like we try to do a good job of segregating out household hazardous waste and giving people the opportunity to dispose of that correctly, as well as trying to educate people on why to do that. And so, yeah, this is another way for us to help double down on segregating materials out of the waste and doing the right thing, which is diverting that material, even if it still ends up going to the landfill, because it's still going to be better off going to a facility that's there to handle that versus just throwing it in a big pile of trash that's going to sit there and rot, or maybe someday, eventually be burned to create power for us. But yes, you're absolutely correct, Member Constant.
I still want to see a plan for batteries, the nickel, the little terrible ones. Thank you.
Member Vold?
Thank you. Well, for my part, I think this is an exciting project, and I'm happy that it is happening at pace. Particularly when we're thinking about rising energy cost and future uncertainty. I think this is much needed innovation. I guess my question is, how do we get a ski hill? Copenhill is Copenhagen, Denmark's waste to energy plant, and they actually have a slanted roof, and on the top they have a ski hill. So some built-in urban recreation. Pretty cool. Yeah.
Doesn't look like anybody wants to take that.
If there's no one else in the queue, I'll go back.
I had myself in the queue, and then we'll come back to you, Wisconsin. You mentioned just briefly the compliance order. I didn't quite follow the update on that. Are we talking about the excess gas emissions from the landfill?
So
Your mic's off.
So that is part of the COBC is a supplemental emissions project. And at one time we were, the two options on the table was a deep injection well or evaporation. The deep injection well did not work, and the evaporator at scale is likely not going to work. So what we are proposing is a hybrid pretreatment process. And so it's going to take time. And because it's an unknown, we've asked for more of a partnership environment where we figure it out together. So we're going to be bringing up our national organization, SWANA, Solid Waste Association of North America, to host a PFAS all day, 8-hour training, and in which they can participate with us, so we can all learn together and explore these different leachate treatment options, as well as from our engineering team that has a pretty good depth and breadth nationwide about what those best practices are, so we can figure out what's the best fit for Anchorage.
What's the timeline for the key decisions, and what's the scale of our financial exposure there, I guess?
So our plan right now is we are providing a high level scope and also some questions about what are the guidelines for effluent as far as if we were looking at a direct discharge option. So once we get that guidance from ADEC, from their water folks, then we'll be able to go back and refine what the plan is. We're also going to be doing some benchmark testing, looking at the leachate profile and then figuring it out from there as far as disposal goes. So we haven't committed to a timeline because we're just doing the very best that we can with where we are today. So looks like we have Ben here as well.
Mr. Bowman?
To the chair, you also asked about the potential financial exposure. This is the supplemental environmental project, which offsets some of the potential fines that resulted from the landfill gas excess emissions that we entered into the compliance order by consent to deal with those fines and the overall excess methane exceedances. Then the supplemental environmental project can offset the potential fines. The total value, if we do not enter into the supplemental environmental project, of potential fines is $200,000. If we spend $271,000 on the supplemental environmental project, that will cover those fines.
Okay, thank you. And then just, I will get to member comments. I just want to check quickly. We also have an update from the PAMP. I don't believe we had anyone here coming to give us an update on the stormwater utility today. Just kind of scanning the room in case I'm wrong. No, okay, just want to budget our time appropriately. So, Member
Thanks.
Constant.
Yeah, we this conversation about skiing on top of a waste to energy program brought to mind Asplund, and you put forward this great photograph of the Asplund plant and its burning of solids. What's the cause of the odors when you're on the trail?
So that's, I mean, the nature of a wastewater plant, it's, and you have some exterior, the clarifiers are open. So that's, I mean, that's one of the downsides of wastewater plants is that there's sometimes some smell and that's a large facility. So.
Right, so it's not an offshoot of the burning. Then.
No, not at all. No, the incineration process actually is probably the least smelly. It's the, the head works, it's the open clarifiers and, all the stuff that goes into that.
Yeah, because that can be pretty overwhelming out there sometimes, to say the least. So, and what's the status of the permit process there?
So the status of the permit process, and that might be a good topic for next month to do an update on that, because we actually have received a draft revised permit application as well as the revised biological evaluation. We have meetings with EPA and National Marine Fisheries Service on the first week of June, and then plan is to submit those to EPA shortly after that. So early June, submit the revised package to EPA.
Thank you.
Anything else for SWS or AWU? Not seeing anything. Thank you all for being here. Let's go ahead and have the team from the PAMP come on up.
Good afternoon.
Mike's off.
Hi, as Steve Rebuffalo, Port Director. I'm here with John Daly, who is the PAMP Program Engineering Manager for the port. And we're going to give you a short presentation today on that portion of the PAMP, the next phase that the port's going to be responsible for, which is the design and construction of the electrical substation that will be connected to the new cargo docks for the purposes of providing all the electrical energy required for the ship-to-shore cranes and all the other appurtenances that are going to be required there. So I don't know, Mark, did you want to say anything first or before we turn it over to John?
Yeah, no, this was just Deputy Meeting Manager Mark Spafford. So we just wanted to give an update on this project because it's separate, from the PAMP at this point, and just to make sure that everyone knew that we were getting stuff done and making things happen in a timely manner. So, but I'll turn it back over to Steve.
Nope, we'll give it to John. Yep. I'm the marketing major sitting between the two engineers. So if I'm doing all the talking, then that should frighten you.
Yeah, John Daly, Port of Alaska Engineering. So as Steve and Mark mentioned, we're just trying to give you an overview of where we're at on this part of the project. What we did is, let's see, how do I get this thing to move now? There we go. Yeah, so right now we have a project that's just about to enter into construction. We've awarded a contract for Terminal 1. It's a large contract. It's a big milestone. And as part of that project, they're going to bring 3 new ship-to-shore cranes up and install them. And this project is a support element for that. We broke out the substation from the overall project because it's electrical specialty construction, and we thought it would be more efficient to have that go out as a separate project as opposed to have it as an item under a general construction for a dock. You know, dock constructors are not necessarily experts in electrical work, so we thought it would be more efficient to do it that way. We put it out for a design build bid. The package include both quality items and cost. And we received 3 proposals, all of which were responsive and pretty high quality proposals. They all were within the $30 million estimate, engineer's estimate. And the project is funded by a state of Alaska grant, so it's fully funded. We did select a proposer, and we're in negotiations with them now. So I think by the rules of the municipal purchasing department, we're not actually supposed to release the name or exact details until we're finished with that. We're close to being finished with that. And, you know, I guess the important part is that it is within our budget, and we think they're qualified. So here's a picture of the new ship-to-shore crane. Just to give you an idea, there's 3 of these large cranes, and they require a fair amount of power. One of the driving things of the project is to order long lead time items. The electrical items we're finding, even before the whole tariff drama, electrical items are long lead time. Some of them take 2 years, sometimes longer than 2 years. And we have a few big items that'll take at least 2 years to get. So here's some of the major items: large transformers, a large generator, a substation control building. And then the other items that we're going to have on this project there's going to be some underground conduit, which is a challenge to us at the port because we always have contaminated soils and a lot of utility conflicts down there. And then we need to coordinate with Chugach Electric because they have a part in this. They have to bring their primary power and some switch gear to the substation. So that's going on. We also have an issue or an element to look at an alternative site. The base project is located immediately adjacent to our new administration building. It's kind of in our parking lot, if you will. And there's actually a site that might be better for us located on the north extension. The advantage of that is that it kind of gets it out of our hair and allows this parking area is a multi-use area right now. It's used by the military when they bring helicopters in. It's used by Matson for some container operations. So it's kind of a land use thing. We'd really rather have the substation out of our hair, if you will, on the north end. We didn't have complete time to flesh that out, so we put it as a study element in this project. And the team will be looking at that and giving us some costs and ideas about whether we can pull that off. So this is a drawing that kind of shows the T1 and T2. And right in the bottom there, it's kind of hard to read, but that's where the substation is. It's in that gray area. You get a little better close-up of it here. The building on the left is our administration building, and the stuff on the right is a substation. You see it takes up quite a bit of room. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's transformers, generators, a control building, switch gear, fences around the whole thing. So it kind of takes up the whole parking lot, if you will. And then here's a schematic that shows the concept for moving it to the north end, where it would be out of our way. It'd be in a what's now a gravel yard there, be off to the side. And the advantage of that is we would be able to continue to use our parking area for multiple uses such as the military and container and parking and things like that. So here's our schedule. One of the reasons we're bringing this to you is that we hope to bring this to you now is that we hope to bring it for assembly approval on June 10th. We're hoping the contract will be ready from our end and you will see it on that assembly meeting date. If that all falls into place, then we will give them notice to proceed and the contract award. This year, they would be doing the site study, ordering the long lead time items, doing design work. Next year, 2026, they would be doing site work, and that's mainly prepping the site, doing the underground conduit, building the pads for the equipment. The equipment wouldn't arrive next year, so in 2027 and 2028 is when the long lead time items would arrive, which point they would plug them into the pads that they've already prepared on site. And then the ultimate goal is July 2028, they're done. August 2028, the cranes arrive and they hook them up and away we go. So that's kind of an overview of the schedule. And that's all I had.
Okay, I have myself in the queue, and then I'll have member Constant. So around the conversation with Terminal 1, we talked about the fact that if we did not have the infrastructure in place to accept delivery of the cranes, the municipality could be on the hook for some damages. Does that include completion of the work on the electrical substation? As in, right now we say completed July 2028. If that gets pushed back until after the cranes are on site, are we on the hook for damages there?
Correct. There could be a problem with that. That's the damages sandwich. There was
Right.
3 or 4 different parties that all have to come together to pull this whole thing off. It includes the substation, the crane delivery, the dock. All those pieces have to come together. And if any one piece doesn't come together, that would damage the other pieces.
So it sounds like it's fair for me to be a little nervous when we say the project will be completed 1 month before we find ourselves potentially on the hook.
Correct. And we're in negotiations with and that was clearly stated in the contract documents. It's the schedule for that is in the contract documents. We are in negotiations with them and they think they're going to be done early.
Being
the contractor.
Yeah.
The big issue is the long lead time items. They think they're going to pull it off. They've said they're confident in that. But you know the world today with the supply chain and uncertainty, so I can't say there's no risk. There's a risk associated.
Didn't we not approve those agreements yet? Didn't we send them back for renegotiation because the terms had changed and they were looking at a cheaper set of contract or cranes that are already built, they're used. And so we're not in that environment yet. And so
That's true.
until such a time as we have an approved agreement, we're not in the damages sandwich because we don't have an agreement.
Right.
And so
That's correct.
that's, a sidebar to your comment. That wasn't my main, but Ben might have something.
Yeah,
to
in
add.
fact, it was Mattson who asked to kind of slow this down a little bit because their acquisition strategy is changing. But you've got it right. Now their primary responsibility is to see if they can't find used cranes. Yeah, no, but there's interest, there's challenges with that too, because they're used cranes that need to be modified to work in this environment up here. So just because you got a crane and you can get it the day after tomorrow, there's going to be a significant amount of retrofitting that has to happen to it before it can be brought up here. On the upside though, they don't have to leave where they are until we're ready for them up here. So if there's, if we're on the margin, and we hope not to be on the margin, it's going to be easier to play with when the delivery date actually needs to be. Yeah, but to John's point, our in-house goal, since we're the ones that are going to be managing this thing, is to have the substation waiting on T1.
And have a follow up to my question, then I still have my questions.
Yeah, Mr. Bowman?
To the
I'll just
chair.
know we got about 5 minutes left. And let me just ask real quickly, is anybody here for audience participation? No, okay, please.
To the chair, right now, Chair Constant has said it perfectly correctly, that we have a contract with the T1 contractor. If the T1 contractor is not able to, at the end of, there's a cool period during the winter where they're not going to be doing much construction work. And that was originally planned to be when the mats and cranes would be delivered and also commissioned. A delay in the substation would not stop delivery, but it could delay the commissioning of the mats and cranes. But all of that was based around the original framework of new cranes coming from Asiatic markets. Now that Matson is proposing a different potential origin for the cranes, it would distinctly change the scope of damages which might be passing back and forth between the parties. That's one of the key features and why those contracts are not being negotiated and brought to the assembly at this moment, because Matson is figuring out what they want to do and how they want to do it. And so we'll be able to give you an update on what those damages might be once we know.
And I would put a coda on that they changed the terms because they wanted to go a different way. We have this scenario. This scenario can now be negotiated into the terms. So the liability can be wiped away essentially from this, if there is such liability in the negotiating before it comes to us. And so all bets are off on the previous framework is the bottom line. And so I think it's a kind of a sidebar point, and it's worth noting that all these pieces are tied together in time. And there are liabilities. However, this one in particular, it's not our problem because they ultimately said, we think we have another way we need to go. And so with any contract, when they change the terms are all on the table. And so unless otherwise bound. So I have a question, and I think I kind of answered it for myself. It seems like the cost escalation is pretty high relative to the power generation. Because I was thinking about our installation of power plant 2 over in the old MLP and how the price of that per megawatt was a certain amount. But I think cost escalations and my own terrifying little math equation landed at 30 million as well, after you kind of compare the cost for 2005 to 2009 when they did that construction. So I think that it kind of washes out just from basic inflation. It seems pretty expensive though.
Yeah, the thing to remember is we do have a large generator in here that might be different, and there's a transformer and a load bank for that. And then there's also underground conduit trenching through a contaminated soil. So there's some items unique to the port that may not be identical to a substation in Midtown or something like that.
For major power plant. Okay, well, that's fascinating. Are there other kind of large projects that aren't kind of classified as within the modernization program that we should be looking out for?
You go first.
This one actually is within the PAM. It's just, it was broken out from the T1 project. It's still being
Okay,
considered.
rephrase the question then. Are there any other major elements outside of what we would colloquially call Terminal 1 and Terminal 2 that we should be anticipating coming forward so that we have a sense of what we're kind of looking at towards completion?
Yeah, I'll do my best to give you as about as comprehensive a visionary list as we might have right now. You know, the first one is we're going to be coming to you at long last for the approval to purchase that battery energy storage system, for which we got a grant from the Department of Defense through the Defense Community Infrastructure Program. Step one of what we've been calling the Port Power Plant, to give us a little bit of energy independence and the capability to keep operating, you know, the port should the power feed go down from ML&P. You know, we are in that predicament right now, whereas if the power goes out from the power plant, the port shuts down. We have generators enough to safe the facility so that if vessels have to leave, they can. But we don't have enough power to sustain operations in a power outage. This is step one to provide that capability to continue port operations if the power goes out. The first battery of what we hope might be a half a dozen that will do that. And that's a big project that you'll have to give us the green light on. And that requires, we've learned a lot in how to deal with Chugach Electric from all what we've had to do to deal with Chugach Electric for that. So hopefully the power, the learning curve won't nearly be as steep as it was the first time. But that's the first big one. We are also,
Can I just pause right there? I mean, we're up against the 12 p.m. deadline. We do have a 12:10 Budget and Finance Committee meeting, so.
I'll rephrase the question. Could you send us a table of potential projects that fall outside of what would generally be considered Terminal 1 and Terminal 2?
yes,
This is visionary, so folks have an idea.
absolutely.
So that we don't get too many surprises along the way.
No, sure. Do I have permission to exclude the Ship Creek small boat launch?
Yeah, that's not the port's problem.
All right, lovely. On that note, we will go ahead and conclude this meeting and be back at 12:10. Thanks.